Okay, all right, go ahead.
Karine, you said to Peter that the president wants to see Roe restored. It's still not clear to me, though, if he supports the late-term abortion restrictions that were included in Roe.
Well, if it's in Roe, then that's what he wants to see. I'm just not going to get into it. It's whatever is in Roe, what Roe was when it was a constitutional law, that's what the president wants to see restored. He's been very clear about that.
He also said he wants to be a president for all Americans, but how in this situation with this issue does he best represent the pro-life Americans who want to see more unborn babies saved?
What I will say is majority of Americans wants to see their rights protected, wants to see women have their rights protected, want women to be able to make those deeply, deeply personal decisions on their bodies, on their own, not politicians. That's what majority of Americans want to see. And so the president's going to stand with majority of Americans on this issue.
Do those unborn babies have any rights then?
I'm not going to get into that question. I've been very, very clear about this, where majority of Americans stand. And that's what matters. But the president wants to see Roe become the law of the land, and that's what he's going to continue to ask Congress to do. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. Oh, my goodness. I'm going in the back. Go ahead. Way in the back. Go ahead. No, right,
Thanks.
yeah.
We've spoken here about the White House's outreach to Republicans about the Senate foreign aid bill. But, for example, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was on TV last night sort of saying that she was a little bit skeptical about the humanitarian provisions in that bill. Mm-hmm. What is the White House doing in terms of outreach to more progressive Democrats?
So, look, our Office of Leg Affairs and other White House officials are always in direct contact, continuous contact with congressional members, obviously congressional leadership as well. So I can assure you that we've had regular conversations. I'm not going to get into private conversation. We hear the Congresswoman's concerns. I just don't have anything to share outside of what she said.
And next week is the second anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Should we expect sort of programming around that? The president's given sort of big speeches about that in the past.
Yeah, and as you know, he went to Poland. He went to Ukraine, actually, in a war-zone country, obviously, last year, and Poland. I just don't have anything to share about any travel or remarks. Kelly?
President Biden has recently talked about Donald Trump's financial issues in jest at fundraisers and so forth. Today, there was action reducing the amount that Mr. Trump has to put forward in order to stave off the judgment as he continues it. Does the president have any comment on that, and also the setting of an April 15th trial date in one of the cases involving the former
So I'm going to be super careful. It's an ongoing matter, so I'm not going to speak to it. And I'm sure the president will have opportunities to speak to it himself, and so I'll leave that to him. I'm just not going to speak to that particular or any ongoing litigation or case from the podium.
Can I ask a bit about whether you can share any preview ahead of the Japanese Prime Minister visit on April 10th? And in particular, has the government been in touch with the Japanese government on the Nippon Steel, U.S. Steel deal? Or has that been not a subject that's preceded this visit?
So, look, I don't have, I've seen the reporting. This is the FT reporting that you're speaking to? Or
That's linked to it, that
Yeah.
there be some sort of, whatever you can share on that is great too.
Yeah.
But I mean, more broadly, have the governments discussed this steel deal at all?
So I just don't have anything to share. Obviously, that visit is just in a couple of weeks. There's going to be many items on the agenda to discuss. I just don't have anything to share on that particular question. Okay.
Thanks, Karine. 60 Minutes reported last night on a connection between anomalous health incidents and a unit of the Russian military intelligence service. What's the White House reaction to that reporting?
So I'm going to be really careful here. The intelligence community has not concluded that. Obviously, there was an assessment that intelligence community made, and so I would have to refer you to ODNI on their assessment. But that particular piece about Russia, I know that they had not concluded that.
Right. And I know that the intelligence community has said that they still think it's not likely that a foreign power is responsible. How can the administration continue to believe that when you have so many credible U.S. officials who have experienced this saying otherwise?
So look, this is an intelligence community assessment. ODNI can speak specifically on how they got to that assessment, how they got to that conclusion, so I want to be super mindful. What I can speak to is what we have done since 2023, since the Intelligence Committee assessment, and we have taken this very seriously. The President takes U.S. personnel, making sure that they are protected is the most important. A couple of steps that we took, we prioritized investigations into the cause of AHIs and to examine reports thoroughly. Now, this is something that the President directed the departments in the federal government, obviously across the federal government, to do. Ensure that U.S. government personnel and their families who report AHIs receive the support and timely access to medical care that they need, and to take reports of AHIs seriously and threat to personnel with respect and compassion. So we have taken some actions that will that the President directed his agencies across the federal government. At any specifics to the intelligence assessment, I would have to refer you to ODNI.
And yet the Pentagon confirmed another aspect of 60 Minutes reporting today, that a Department of Defense official who was in Vilnius for the NATO summit last year also experienced what appears to be AHI. Can you give us any update on that person's condition?
I don't have any update. I'm very careful about speaking to any personnel specific case, so I don't want to do that from here. I would have to refer you on Department of Defense, since that came from the Department of Defense.
Bottom line, are U.S. officials who are working on issues related to Russia, particularly overseas, are they safe?
Look, we are going to continue to emphasize the importance of prioritizing, right? Making sure that personnel are protected, and we are going to do everything that we can. This is something that this president believes is important, and so look, we're going to continue to do a comprehensive examination of the effects here that we're seeing and the potential causes of AHI. That's something that we're going to continue to look into, and look, we take this very seriously. This is why we have taken an all-government approach and have directed agencies to do the three things that I listed out, this is important. We see this as a important issue that we want to certainly prioritize, and that's what we have been doing since 2023. Putting into Ukraine, set forth. And so the president had to take historic action, take aggressive action in dealing with disruption in the supply chain. He released the Strategic Petroleum Reserve so that we can deal with the supply chain, and he continued to take action to lower cost. And that's what we've seen, whether it's healthcare costs, whether it's dealing with junk fees, whether it's prescription drugs, lowering those costs. That's what the president took action in. But we saw what was happening when the president took office. We did. Okay.
Thanks, Karine. As you know, there's a tradition dating back to the Truman administration of offering intelligence briefings to major party presidential nominees. President Trump was declared the presumptive nominee on March 6th. Has the White House offered intel briefings to former President Trump, and if so, how have they begun?
I would refer you to the ODNI. That's for them to speak to. Okay. Thanks, everybody. It is dangerous. It is abhorrent. We got to call that out. Go ahead.
Thanks, Karine. On a different topic, would the president encourage Democrats to help protect Speaker Johnson from being ousted from his role if Marjorie Taylor Greene were to make good on her threat to move forward next week?
We've been very clear when it comes to internal leadership discussions in Congress. We just do not get involved. That is for Democratic leadership to speak to. That's not something we get involved in.
Thanks, Karine. I'm wondering if the White House has any response to the reports of violent clashes on UCLA's campus last night, that there was a group of counter-protesters that tried to forcibly dismantle the pro-Palestine encampment and the clash that resulted afterwards.
So look, what I can say more broadly, any form of violence we are going to denounce, we're going to call out. Violent rhetoric, any type of violence, we have to call out. That doesn't change anything. We're going to continue to do that.
Thank you, Karine. The president in less than 3 weeks is going to be delivering commencement addresses at both Morehouse and West Point. What sort of environment is the White House preparing for the president to encounter there?
So when you speak about environment, security, or anything like that, that's something for the Secret Service to speak to. I can't speak to that. What I can say is the president is very much looking forward to speaking to graduates.
What mood? does he expect to encounter on campus?
What
I know you
mood?
can't talk about.
Well, I mean, look, I don't want to get into hypotheticals here. The president is hoping to encounter and and see family members and students who are thrilled and excited to be celebrating an important day. He's going to be celebrating that day with them, talking about their future, hoping to deliver remarks that hit home for these graduates and their families. It's a special day. It's a special day. And so he's looking forward to doing that. He did two commencement speeches last year, two before then, before 2023, obviously. And so this is something that he looks forward to doing. I can't speak to the mood. I can't speak to security situation. I can't speak to that. I can't get into hypotheticals. I can speak to how important that moment is going to be, and the president certainly looks forward to it.
But is it the White House's expectation that some of the current frustration on campus will have subsided by that time? And if so, why?
I don't have a crystal ball to look into the future. I just don't. That is not something that I have the ability of doing. What I can say is this is an important day. This is an important month, yes, graduation month, but an important day for these graduates. And he's, as the president tends to do when he speaks at graduation, he's going to meet the moment.
And just to follow up on the question about some of the reports from police that the protesters that were arrested in New York were not students. Yesterday, John Kirby said that there was no intelligence to support the idea that there were bad actors involved in some of these protests. Does the intelligence still support that?
I'm just going to be really mindful. I'm just not going to speak to that. There's local enforcement, law enforcement on the ground, so I will speak to that. I think what I can say more broadly, this is a painful moment, and we understand that for many communities, and we know that these kinds of charge moments pose challenges for law enforcement, and the president continues to believe, as I've said multiple times, that Americans have the right to peacefully protest within the law. That is their right. It is part of our freedoms here in America, and at the same time, we are going to condemn anti-Semitism. We believe that is hate speech. It is abhorrent, and we're going to continue to condemn that.
Well, with that said, I mean, does the president believe New York Mayor Adams and leaders of Columbia University and City College of New York acted appropriately by having the protesters at those colleges arrested and their encampments forcibly shut down?
That is a decision for colleges and universities to decide on. The law enforcement, if you think about local law enforcement, they know what's going on the ground. They have a better sense of what's going on the ground, and obviously they have to make decisions. We are talking about protecting students and making sure that they feel safe on campus. We're talking about a small group of students who are disrupting that ability for students to have that academic experience. That's what we're talking about here. We believe, and I will continue to say this, Americans have the right to peacefully protest within the law. That is incredibly important. And we also have to condemn hate. We have to condemn anti-Semitism. That is something that this president believes. We also understand, as I just stated to your colleague, that many communities, this is a painful time. And as a very charged environment, charged moments, when you see those type of charged moments, they do pose challenges for law enforcement. But that is their decision to make.
Well, when we look nationwide, all these protests erupting at college campuses, has the response, been the appropriate response, or has it been, too harsh?
So look, there's going to be local investigations. There's going to be cases on this, and I don't want to get ahead of that. I can't go into every case here. What I can say is, in these charged moments, we understand how difficult it is. We understand how painful it is in this moment, and how because of those charged moments, it can be challenging for law enforcement. At the same time, students have to be allowed, Americans have to be allowed to peacefully protest. That is important. That is part of our freedoms here in America. We got to make sure that we continue to say that. We believe in this administration that we have to continue to say that and call out any anti-Semitism that we see. It is dangerous. It is abhorrent. We got to call that out.
At a fundraiser over the weekend, the president began his remarks by talking about Israel. He said, Israel said it's up to Hamas. If they wanted to do it, we could end it tomorrow. It all has to do. And then he cut himself off and said, I shouldn't get into all of this. I don't want to get going. Can you just finish the sentence for us? And what he was trying to say, especially when he was talking about it all has to do with
Look, I'm obviously, as I say often, certainly going to let the president speak for himself.
But he didn't finish speaking.
I know, but look, I think obviously Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, came here and gave a very good and detailed, in-depth laydown of where we are, and it's very much where the president is. And talked about humanitarian aid, obviously the importance of getting that into Gaza, and how we want to make sure that we deal with what we're seeing there with the dire situation in Gaza. Obviously, he talks about our continued support. He talked about our continued support for Israel's security. That is ironclad. That is what we want to make sure that, you know, they are able to defend themselves. And so I think all of that remains to be true. Hostage deal, we want to get to a ceasefire and also create a situation where we can get more of that humanitarian aid, bring hostages home. So all of that continues to be true. I think the words that you heard from the President's National Security Advisor, I think is very clear on where the President is. I can't speak beyond that. And, you know, I think the President started out saying what was on his mind, but more broadly, where we are with the situation in Gaza and Israel has been very clear, and we want to continue to lay that out. That is one of the reasons that Jay came out here.
And a quick one. The House is likely to vote on the Israel Security Assistance Support Act later this week, which would ban the administration from withholding military aid to Israel that has been congressionally approved. Is that something that, it's obviously a response to the president's comments over the last week, so is that something that the White House would oppose? Are you talking to Democrats who might be inclined to go with Republicans on this?
So look, I'll start off, I just repeated basically what I wanted to say to this question, which is this president has been very clear. His commitment to Israel's security is ironclad. That has not changed. We share Israel's goal of defeating Hamas, and will continue to stand with Israel to make that happen. We've been very clear. As it relates to the announcement that the president made in the interview last week on CNN, we have paused only one shipment. That includes 2,000 pounds bombs, which can be very destructive in densely populated urban environments, such as Rafah. You heard, obviously, Jake just speak to this. And then so regarding this bill, as you just asked me about, Sungmin, we strongly, strongly oppose attempts to constrain the president's ability to deploy U.S. security assistance consistent with U.S. foreign policy and national security objectives. It is our objective as well that we plan to spend every last cent appropriated consistent with legal obligations, including in the recent supplemental, that national security supplemental that was just passed and the president obviously signed. We are committed to that to that supplemental, so that has not changed.
Thank you, Karine. Republican Senator Mitt Romney said in an interview overnight that he believes that President Biden should have pardoned his predecessor from federal charges, and Romney argued that it's now been a win-win for Trump in his campaign and in his public profile, that he's been able to use these charges to his benefit.
I'm not going to speak to pardons from here. I'm just not, especially for a candidate for a 2024 election. I'm just not going to speak about it from here.
Clemency is obviously a presidential power.
I'm just not going to speak about it from here. Okay.
The Bureau of Labor Statistics yesterday released inadvertently some CPI data 30 minutes before they were supposed to. Came a month after it was demonstrated that an economist had been talking to Wall Street firms, and a couple years after there was some suspicious trading activity. So I'm wondering what level of concern you guys have, how confident you are in the BLS leadership, and if you think there should be an outside sort of investigation.
And to your question, it was an inadvertent leak yesterday by BLS, and there was a statement that they put out. BLS has alerted the Office of Management and Budget and DOL's Office of the Inspector General of the incident. BLS takes its data seriously and security obviously seriously, and is conducting a full investigation into its procedures and controls to ensure the incident is not repeated. BLS can obviously speak more into their investigation. We have the president. We have confidence that this will get done.
The president said this weekend that the next president is likely to have 2 new Supreme Court nominees. Can you talk to the thinking behind that?
I got to be mindful here. It was said in a campaign event, and he certainly was answering that in you know, as it relates to the 2024 election. It's going to be super mindful. I'm going to allow you all to do, the work on this and to kind of figure out who he was talking about, what he meant. But look, I'll say this. Next Monday, a week from today, we are going to be sadly commemorating the Dobbs decision. 2 years ago, from a week from today, we saw what the Supreme Court was able to do. They were able to overturn Roe v. Wade, which was the law of the land for almost 50 years, which gave women the ability to make a decision on their own body, gave women the ability to make important, critical, difficult decisions on their health care. That was taken away. And when that was taken away, we saw contraception is now under attack. We see now IVF is now under attack. We saw what Republicans did just last week. And there are freedoms that are now under attack because of what the Supreme Court was able to do by just overturning something that was the law of the land for almost 50 years. And we know that happened because of what the former president did, which was appoint justices who he believed would be part of overturning Roe v. Wade, and they did just that.
Disliking what the current justices do
Yeah.
is different than getting the opportunity to nominate two.
But I think hopefully you're seeing how I'm trying to connect the two, right? It was said back in 2016, right, that we got to be really mindful on how we move forward here. And what happened in the last administration is that the former president was able to appoint 3 justices. And look what happened, the Dobbs decision happened, right? So there is history here, because I can't speak to 2024, I'm speaking to the past and what occurred. And next Monday, we are going to be commemorating a day where the Supreme Court justice overturned a constitutional right that was around for almost 50 years, that has created 21 states now that have banned abortion. We're talking about 27 million women who are of reproductive rights, reproductive health, who now can't make that decision for themselves. You have doctors, if they perform health care for women that relates to reproductive health care, they could get arrested. I mean, that is where we are right now. That's why I'm using the past to try and help answer the question that you're asking of me, but I'm not going to dive into who the president was speaking of. But you see a pattern here is what I'm trying to speak to. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thanks, Karine. A couple follow-ups. Is the president concerned about additional escalation in the Middle East after this pager incident with Hezbollah and Israel?
I'm going to be super thoughtful about this. I'm not going to get into speculation from here.
I wasn't asking you to speculate.
I'm just not going to go beyond the reports. Just going to be not going to get into hypotheticals here.
Okay, I wasn't asking a hypothetical. I'm asking if the president is concerned about future escalation, which is something he's talked about a lot.
When it comes to the Middle East, that is something that we have spoken to before. We are always obviously concerned about that. This particular incident, I don't want to get into speculate about it or get into hypotheticals about it. When we think about the conflict along the blue line between Israel and Hezbollah, it has gone on for way too long, long enough, and so it is in everyone's interest to resolve it quickly and diplomatically. So we continue to believe that there should be a diplomatic resolution to this, and so I will leave it there. And actually, I'll add, this is why the ceasefire negotiation is so important. This is why the hostage deal is so important. This is why the president and his administration has been working around the clock, 24 hours to get that done. We believe the deal would help reduce tensions along the blue line, and that is one of the reasons. We believe diplomatic, obviously, efforts are critical and important at this time. As it relates to that incident, we've seen the reports. I just don't have anything to say beyond that.
Thanks, Karine. Elon Musk has been, campaigning with former President Donald Trump, and he is offering $1 million to voters. I just was wondering, has the president expressed any concern to, you know, this interference by Elon Musk, and I don't know if he, you know, the administration maybe has any plans or has discussed maybe how to sort of maybe move forward with what Elon Musk is doing with the
So
$1 million.
on this particular question, I'm going to have to refer you to the FEC. Just have to be, that one, that's a place that I'm going to have to refer you. I can't speak to it beyond that.
But has the president mentioned it at all?
He's
Elon
aware
Musk,
of
or-
it. He's aware of it, that I can tell you. I just can't speak to it beyond that. I have to refer you to the FEC. Okay, Jen.
Talk, and you've taken questions today, and obviously throughout the presidency, President Biden has talked a lot about democratic institutions. I'm just curious if between now and Election Day, the president's going to speak sort of more broadly about the confidence in the votes being counted accurately.
Well, the president's talked about this. He believes in our institution. He believes in this will be a free and fair election. He's talked about this. We have to give the American people, who some of them are voting right now, to make sure that they have the confidence in their vote and how important it is to cast their vote. I'm not going to go beyond that, but I think the president has been very clear about that.
But you don't, so we talk about schedules, there's nothing sort of like a big sort of, because he's done these types of addresses on issues like this before, so I'm just curious if like this is a time that he would
No,
do that.
I hear you, and I hear you're talking about the moment that we're in, and if the president's going to speak about it in a more formal way in remarks in a speech, I don't have anything to share with you, but he's been very clear about having the confidence in our institutions. And so I'll leave it there. Okay.